Hey guys, welcome to the video. Salt here. Today we're going to be going over the Archgun the Kuva Ayanga. But before we start, let's go over our commenter board. The first commenter of the last video was Elite Reverser, and the top commenter of the last video was Bessa Baft W. And then we have our recent channel supporters here of Elite Reverser, Whoop-De-Wham, and Nice Bear. Thank you so much for your support. Unique and interesting things about the Kuva Ayanga is that it's an automatic grenade launcher with innate blast on its radial explosions. Those explosions are 6 meters or 9 meters if you're in space in Archwing. Also, this is a Kuva weapon, and so you'll be able to pick a Progenitor element that comes innately on the weapon. Before we go over the build, I want to go over the two builds that I was testing up against each other, because this weapon is very similar to a weapon we did yesterday, the Cortege, which is again an automatic grenade launcher. And so I had initially went into the Ayanga thinking it was probably going to get built out the same. So if we look at config A, this is effectively pretty much the same build we had on the Cortege. It's a crux and flare build, and with this one we would obviously have a heat progenitor. Now, in theory, this is the best way to build the Kuva Ayanga, but if you know me, I don't like theory crafting. I like actually going into game and testing things. And when you go in game and you test things, you realize that the Kuva Ayanga has a very hard time keeping crux up. So the Cortege is an automatic grenade launcher that has a bit more of a spread to it. There's more like spreading pellets that come out of grenades, and so you just kind of randomly by accident hit headshots even when you're not trying. The Ayanga is more of a stream of grenades, and so you actually have to kind of be very accurate if you want to use primary crux. And I have a lot of experience in this game. I have 7,000 hours in Warframe. I consider myself, above average maybe for aiming for headshots, and even me, I was having a really hard time keeping primary crux up. About half the game I was at 10 stacks, and then the other half of the game I was either losing my stacks or slowly building them back up, so I wasn't getting full value out of primary crux, and I didn't like that. And so even though theory crafting, this is the best way to build the Kuva Ayanga, and again, of course, with a heat progenitor here, this is not the build I went with. I ended up going with this second config here, which is a Frostbite Enervate build with a cold progenitor. This is just more consistent. It doesn't require us to do headshots, and so we don't have the inconsistency with crux that we do on the other build. Now let's go over the mods. We have Prime Rubedo Line Barrel for 187% damage, Prime Deadly Efficiency for 220% damage for 17 seconds when we reload from empty. It's important to know that Prime Deadly Efficiency, for this to actually proc, you need to be reloading the weapon. And when you're in Archwing or Necromech, you don't technically reload, you recharge your weapon. And so the only time this will proc is if you're on your Warframe using this as a heavy weapon. So if you're doing a Kuva Ayanga build for a Necromech or an Archwing, don't use Prime Deadly Efficiency and instead use Critical Focus, which is plus 60% critical chance and damage when aiming, or Mark Target, which is plus 120% status chance when aiming. Out of these two, I'd probably go with Critical Focus, but they are quite close. And then the best option instead of these two would be a Riven if you have one. But if you're doing a heavy weapons build for your Warframe, go ahead and stick with Prime Deadly Efficiency. Now we have Prime Deadly or Primed Dual Rounds for 110% multi-shot, Automatic Trigger for 60% fire rate, Hollowed Bullets for 80% critical damage. In the next two slots, we're going to be making Corrosive, so we have the 60/60 Electric mod of Charged Bullets, the 60/60 Toxic mod of Contamination Casing, and then in the very last mod slot, we're going to be having a Cold mod, which is Hypothermic Shell, which is the 60/60 Cold mod there. Now, you do have the option in this last slot to go with the big 120% Cold mod instead of the 60/60. I personally don't like that. I just like using the 60/60, and it's because Cold doesn't stack infinitely. We're really only using Cold to keep our primary Frostbite stacked up, and a 60/60 is good enough for that, especially since we're also using a cold progenitor. Now, there is an option to use a different progenitor than cold too. There is an option to use a magnetic progenitor here. I'll go over that afterwards, but even if you went with the magnetic progenitor, I think that just the 60/60 is good enough because it will still keep Frostbite stacked up. So that's a decision you can make yourself if you want the big 120 or if you want the 60/60. Next, in the arcane slots, in the primary arcane slot, we have primary frostbite, which is on a cold status effect. We get plus 3% critical damage and plus 2.25% multi-shot for 12 seconds, stacking 40 times. And in the secondary arcane slot, we have secondary enervate, which is on hit, increases critical chance by 10% and resets after 6 big critical hits, which they consider orange crits. And the last thing I wanted to talk about on the build was the possibility of switching to a magnetic progenitor. And this is going to be dependent on the type of content that you yourself find yourself doing the most. And that's because cold is always going to be good on the Kuva Ayanga. However, magnetic is sometimes going to be a lot better than cold, but it also sometimes might be a lot worse than cold, and you'll actually be weakening yourself. So let's explain these two situations. Let's say you're the type of player that only does early to mid steel path. And in early to mid steel path, you don't have a parade of Eximuses like you do in mid to late steel path. And that's where magnetic really gets a lot of its strength. It gets on one proc of magnetic, you get 100% extra damage to those overguarded enemies. And on 10 stacks of magnetic, that goes up to 325%. So it's really strong versus those overguarded enemies. And so when you do mid to late steel path, you get a great amount of value out of magnetic. And so you might say, well, why don't I just use magnetic all the time then? Well, if you're only doing early to mid steel path, and then you put magnetic in your progenitor slot here, again, early to mid, you don't have as many Eximuses on the field, and it's going to add magnetic to your status pool here. So magnetic is going to start muddying up what you could possibly get. So instead of getting consistent corrosives and colds, which both do something beneficial, corrosive strips, cold is going to make sure your primary frostbite is staying procced. Instead, once in a while, you're going to get a magnetic on an enemy that doesn't have shields or overguard, and it's going to pretty much do nothing there. And so there are situations where magnetic can hurt you, and there are situations where magnetic is extremely powerful. So that's going to be on a case-by-case basis, depending on what you yourself as the player find yourself doing. If you do mid to late content, go ahead and put a magnetic progenitor on there. If you do early to mid content, I would probably say keep it cold. This is how you build out the Archgun, the Kuva Ayanga. I hope you guys liked it, and if you did, consider leaving a like and subscribing for future content. So now we'll have a 5-minute gameplay portion showcasing the weapon, and when that's done, we'll come back to the orbiter and we'll give it its final score and rank. So I'll see you guys again after the gameplay. Alrighty, we're about to start this 5-minute gameplay portion up here. Let's go ahead and hack the terminal. We'll get into the Kuva Ayanga. I'm going to be using Proteus Dispensary to make sure I'm topped up on heavy weapons ammo, just so I can give you guys a good showcase. Normally, it's probably not how most people are going to use heavy weapons. Most people are going to use heavy weapons as just some burst DPS. You whip it out, you get some kind of S tier burst DPS, and then you'll eventually run out of ammo and it'll go away. But there are some techs you can do to keep your weapon out forever. Proteus Dispensary is one of them. There's a Kubro that has a special mod for it called Dig, and Dig will let him dig up heavy weapons ammo. That's something that I didn't know about, and actually a couple of the commenters, they enlightened me on that, so I am grateful. Thank you so much. That's probably even a better way than using a subsume, because needing to use a subsume slot to keep your heavy weapon out is a big ask, but a pet is not that big of an ask. So I could definitely see that being the more reasonable way to keep a heavy weapon out, unless for some reason your build is using dispensary. If you notice though, the grenades on the Ayanga are more of a stream of grenades. Let me just kind of shoot into the air here and you'll see. It's more of a stream rather than that like cluster that the Cortege was shooting. And that's what makes it a bit, I shouldn't say it's harder to headshot, but you have to purposely headshot. Where on the Cortege, because they're so random, you are randomly headshotting and it's pretty easy to keep Crux up. This one, you have to purposely be headshotting with an auto grenade launcher, which kind of seems like counterintuitive. It's also important to remember, I do my testing on Lewis Circulus. This is like the best case scenario for Crux because this is a very enemy dense map. They're all about the same head height, so it's very easy to get headshots on Lewis Circulus. And even on Lewis Circulus, I was having a hard time keeping Crux up on the Ayanga. And that was the reason I decided to switch to the Corrosive Cold with Frostbite instead of Crux. Because even in a best case scenario, it was difficult. And then, you know, you think like, well, maybe I play a map that's not best case scenario, right? Like maybe I'm playing Disruption and I have to travel a lot from Demolist to Demolist. And the enemies are a little bit sparse in between. I'd probably won't be able to keep Crux up in that case. I was also tempted to test a merciless conjunction voltage build where it was viral electric. It's gonna be. I ended up not fully testing that one, but I started testing that one. Yeah, the Kuva Ayanga gave me a bit of a headache, I'll tell you what. I think that one would have been okay too, like the viral electric with merciless and conjunction voltage would have been okay. I was pretty sure it wasn't going to be competitive though versus either the Crux with viral heat or the or this one with corrosive cold. So I didn't fully test the merciless conjunction voltage, but I was tempted. I was tempted. We just need some better, we need some better primary arcanes is what we need. Because all the art guns end up either being Crux or Frostbite. It's like, it always falls into those two different arcanes for art guns. Sometimes I'll be tempted to use Blight, and then it's like, well, I have to have Toxic, but I want to make Viral or I want to make Corrosive, and I can't use Blight now. So Blight kind of gets shafted, so you end up having to use Frostbite instead. Right, we're almost at 5 minutes here. We'll kill some Thoraxes. Did we get an Acolyte? Did we get an Acolyte and I just killed him and I didn't even notice it? I think we did get an Acolyte. I've been yapping and I have not been paying attention. So let's get these Thoraxes down. You'll see this is pretty good against Thoraxes. Viral Heat would have been better versus Thoraxes. The Viral Heat is better versus thick enemies. Corrosive Cold has a little bit of an issue versus single target compared to Viral Heat, but obviously Viral Heat though needs Crux and Flare. So that's 5 minutes. We are at 449, so let's head back to the Orbiter now. Welcome back to the Orbiter, guys. So let's go over how the Kuva Ayanga did in its 3 10-minute runs on Steel Path Lewis Circulus. It got 1,051, 980, and 987 kills, putting it in the S tier for kill per minute potential. When it comes to single target damage, it's pretty good versus Acolytes and other mini bosses where they can't stack a lot of statuses. A Corrosive Cold build is just as good as a Viral Heat build, if not better, versus those enemies. So, you know, that's a win for it versus the Viral Heat build we were testing it up against. Now, versus normal thick enemies, though, like Thraxes and Eximuses, that's where Viral Heat does really good because you could stack a lot of heat procs. You also get the increased damage because of the viral stacking, whereas Corrosive Cold doesn't get as many benefits on those normal thick enemies. And so, like the Crux build, like let's assume that we could have a consistent 10 stack of Crux. Yeah, the 10 stack of Crux with Viral Heat probably is easily A tier for single target versus normal thick enemies. Whereas the Corrosive Cold, the build we settled on is, I would say it's still A, but it's low A tier for single target, maybe even on the verge of high B tier, but we'll give it A tier for single target. Just just on the low end of it. When it comes to ease of use, it's pretty easy to use. We don't have a crux build, so we don't have to worry about getting headshots. So yeah, very easy to use. It's an automatic grenade launcher. I would say it's A tier for ease of use. So we did this video right after we did the Cortege yesterday because they were both automatic grenade launchers. I think personally, out of both of them, I like the Cortege. I like the fact that the Cortege can easily do a viral heat build with Crux because it doesn't really have any issues keeping Crux stacked, where the Ayanga kind of gets pushed into going corrosive cold, which is still a great build. It just doesn't have as much scaling potential because you don't get crazy like dot procs. That was one of the reasons I was thinking about going for a merciless conjunction voltage with a viral electric, because at least then I would still have a dot proc. So yeah, like the Ayanga kind of gets pushed into doing corrosive cold, whereas the Cortege can easily do viral heat with Crux. So out of the two automatic grenade launchers, I personally like the Cortege better. So definitely let me know what you guys think. Like if you like the Cortege or if you like the Ayanga better. They're very similar. There's just certain things about them that kind of push them both into going different directions there. So that's my take on the weapon. Tell me what you guys think. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have an amazing day. All right, bye.